Check your fuel gauge, load your shotgun, put on your leather pants. We're heading out into the wasteland for a post-apocalyptic movie geek out.
Welcome to DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show. Level up your RPG campaigns by filling yourself with stories and knowledge. Explore topics from archaeology to film history to writing to literature and much, much more. This is DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show.
Welcome to the show. My name is Matt and I am your host. This is the podcast where we learn how to become better game masters and better role players by filling ourselves with stories and knowledge. You know, guys, I am on a quest to bring you the most fascinating guests that I can find and talk about the most interesting topics that I can think of, all with the aim of helping us be better game masters and better role players. Now, I do love talking to game designers, to writers, but I think it is important to kind of explore story wherever we find it. And one place in our culture where we find stories all the time and that we are all absorbing stories from are, of course, movies. So in today's episode, I have a returning guest on the show. He does happen to be a game designer and longtime role player, but he is also a post-apocalyptic movie geek, just like I am. So today we explore some post-apocalyptic movies starting all the way back in the 1950s, and we get up to about the late 80s or so. This actually turned into a part one. I will have my guest back on where we will pick up in the late 80s and continue on to present day discussing movies that involve the apocalypse and specifically the aftermath, the post-apocalyptic worlds that filmmakers and writers have been coming up with for decades. So enough of me talking about the episode. Let's jump in. My guest today is the co-founder of Crypt Monkey Games, Ty Rucker. Ty, welcome back to the show.
Hey, yeah, I'm glad to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. I know last time we had talked about some of your games, and we talked about how you and your game group play Realms of Understreet, the campaign setting that I created in that. But I wanted to have you back on the show because you are a movie geek, just like me. And I wanted to talk about some post-apocalyptic movies, and I thought you were kind of the perfect person to do that, especially when I had mentioned one last time. I had mentioned Steel Dawn, and you knew what I was talking about. So I was like, okay, Ty's the right guy to talk about some of these movies with.
Yeah, I've seen so many movies that we probably shouldn't have seen.
Oh, I know. There are some that, yeah, definitely.
And I love them.
There are tons of movies where I was just sold on the cover art to only realize that it had nothing to do with the movie. So,
right.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about some of these post-apocalyptic movies today. We have a huge list, so hopefully we can get through some of these. Some of these are movies that I talked about in a presentation I gave at Archon, which is a convention here in the Midwest. And then you provided your list as well. And I've kind of put them together in chronological order so we can kind of go through them. I will say this is a family-friendly podcast. Some of these movies are not family-friendly. So anybody who's listening should pay attention to the ratings on those movies before they take our word as a recommendation. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun because some of these movies are great. I'll just go ahead and kick it off. So we're going through chronologically, and you provided our earliest film, which is The Day the World Ended from 1955, and it is a Roger Corman special. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's a really old movie, but it's new to me, actually. I was saying before we were on here that I've only found that movie in the last year or two, and it was pretty much right up my alley. So the idea behind that guy is there's I believe it was a nuclear war, something like that. So there's this valley where everything takes place really inside of this valley. These people are sort of safe and pocketed away from all of this radiation and these mutants that are being created from the radiation. And it's about the struggle of these different people living together in this house, their relationships. And there's some people that aren't as nice as other people and things like that, of course. But it's a lot of fun. You've got your mutants, you got your creatures, and you have your super realistic sci-fi effects. No, it was 1955. You don't have that, but it's a lot of fun. The story's fun anyway.
Yeah, and sadly, I have not seen this, but I have heard about it, and then I watched the trailer today before we started recording, and it looks like it is something else. It does look like it is right up my alley as well.
Yeah, it could easily be on one of these shows where they're making fun of it throughout the entire thing, right?
Yeah,
Besides theater material.
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering if they had covered it.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, though.
Yeah. All right. So if anybody wants to check out The Day the World Ended, actually, I guess I should say I'll be providing links for these movies in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. So people can check out the trailer or see if they can rent some of these. I don't know if that one is available to rent, but you can certainly find the trailer on YouTube, and it is something else. Was there any other thoughts about The Day the World Ended?
Well, just to mention for anybody that does want to watch it, the last time I saw it, it was on Amazon Prime anyway. So if you've got that, you may be able to see it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, 1955, this is kind of right at kind of the height of the atomic scare, right? And that makes perfect sense why Roger Corman is trying to ride that wave with this movie, which I'm sure fit right into a double feature at a drive-in movie theater.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
So we'll go from Roger Corman there to On the Beach, 1959. Now, this movie is kind of classic old Hollywood, and it was certainly not a B movie. This was directed by Stanley Kramer, and it starred Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, Fred Astaire. So some big names were involved in this one. Have you ever seen this movie, Ty?
I'm definitely going to go find this one. I can't believe folks like Astaire were in this. You know, you don't really imagine him in a movie like this, but certainly the plot.
I'm sorry, Ty, you kind of cut out.
Oh, I was just saying I haven't seen this one yet, but it's definitely going on my list. You don't really expect folks like Fred Astaire to be in a movie like this, so I suspect that it probably was pretty good.
Yeah, it is a good movie. It was kind of one of those Stanley Kramer, the director. He was kind of known for like message movies, kind of back in the 50s and 60s. And On the Beach it kind of concerns a nuclear war, and the captain of a submarine and his crew think they have survived, and they go to Australia. But then, of course, there's a twist, and a very bleak twist that actually nobody's going to survive, right? And so, spoilers on a very old movie, but it is very well written, very well directed, and certainly kind of old Hollywood. So again, just kind of picking up on the scare of nuclear war and how it is unwinnable, that it would be just absolutely foolish that if we would ever engage in a nuclear war.
Yeah, there's some truth in that.
Yeah. No kidding. So then the next movie, you had it on your list. It is The Last Man on Earth, 1964. And of course, we'll give a St. Louis shout out to Vincent Price, who was in the starring role. And this is the first screen adaptation of I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I have seen this movie and I do enjoy it. So what were some of your thoughts on this movie, and why do you include it in the list?
Well, and maybe we talk about the other ones later too, but certainly all three of those adaptations, I love them all for different reasons. Certainly this one with Vincent Price is just sort of it just seems like a calm terror or frustration throughout the entire thing, that he's just trying to figure out how to get through this world. And, I like the creature. I think the first one was like, were they like vampires or like a smart zombie or something like that?
Yeah, I was trying to remember that too. I have seen it, but I had seen it maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And there are, like you mentioned, there are going to be more adaptations of this. So they kind of do blend together. But I think they were smart, like zombies in this one.
Some kind of a virus thing, right?
Yeah, it's always a virus, right? So So like Vincent Price plays like one of the last like normal people who isn't infected or can't be infected. And he is like surrounded by all of these creatures, these people who've been infected. And it's very much kind of like a study in loneliness. And we'll talk about some of the other adaptations later. This one seems to get remade every once in a while.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll get remade again.
Yeah, I'm sure it will, because I know, I don't know, it just seems very popular with filmmakers. Of course, Richard Matheson was very prolific writer and had lots of screenplays and and novels adapted for movies. I think Spielberg's Duel was one of Richard Matheson's novellas or short stories that was turned into a movie. Mm-hmm. So The Last Man on Earth, it is, you do have to, watching a movie from 1964, you have to remember that the world moved at a slower pace back then. So you can't judge, you can't judge the movie by that, but it definitely has a slower pace. And Vincent Price is just, he's just super cool. So how can you pass this one up?
Right. No, yeah, I love all of these movies. And the one thing that they all three have in common is that, like you said, that loneliness and the way that they have had to sort of fortress themselves up inside of their home, which is always fun, I think, in these kinds of movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it definitely kind of makes you think about what that would actually be like. And of course, we're recording this at a time when a lot of us had to wall ourselves in our homes, which is kind of maybe it's a little morbid for us to be talking about it, but that's what we're kind of experiencing. And just to think that if you were just alone and there was no one else to talk to at all in the world, and what that would feel like, that would be something else.
Yeah. Like you said, we're in the middle of the COVID thing, but maybe it's morbid. But for me, I'm able to kind of separate the two things from real life and the fun entertainment parts of it.
Sure, absolutely. Hopefully, we can still do that. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, the next one was one that I had on my list, and it is just an all-time classic. It is The Planet of the Apes from 1968. Of course, this is Charlton Heston, and very famous movie that takes place after an atomic war. And it is based on a novel by Pierre Boulle. Actually, I just read that a few months ago. It was great. Really, hardly almost nothing is the same as the movie. I take it you have seen the original Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I've seen all of the original Planet of the Apes probably 5 or 6 times since I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I like the new movies too. They're fun. They're interesting. I like the different take they took on it, or how the apes come about. I also like the chronology of the new ones. The one thing that bothered me about the old Planet of the Apes was that you were sort of going forward in time and then you jump back. It seemed a little bit jarring, but
yeah,
the new ones, I appreciate the chronology a little bit more. But other than that, I love all of the Planet of the Apes movies. Those were great movies.
Yeah.
And they're movies with enough life that you forget that they're actually apocalyptic films.
Yeah, no kidding. I know if it wasn't for the twist ending, right, in the classic film, you would almost just think it's just, a fantasy film or something like that. But then you realize it is, post-apocalyptic. So yeah, if there's anybody out there who hasn't watched the original Planet of the Apes, they need to go watch that movie like right now, because it is fantastic. There is a very famous scene in a cornfield where the apes are hurting the humans around it, and it is just fantastic. And then, as you mentioned, it spawned, what was it? I think it was like 4 sequels. So it was Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. And kind of like what you were talking about there with the chronology is that the second one takes place after Charlton Heston's character arrives on the Planet of the Apes, but then the third movie jumps all the way back in time, back to like a present day Earth in the early 70s. Then we start kind of getting the progression. So then Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which I think is probably the best one of the sequels, kind of shows the uprising of the apes. And then Battle for the Planet of the Apes is that movie is some kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But I think they are all worth watching. But if somebody's listening and they haven't seen that original one, you've got to see that one, because that is a fantastically made film, just from beginning to end. It is just great. Some odd things like astronauts smoking openly, on a spaceship and things like that. But it was a different time back then.
It was.
Yeah. And of course, the famous Rod Serling provided a kind of a punch up of the script and the classic twist ending, which I'm sure everybody knows about already. But so those movies are great if anybody wants to check this out.
I did not know that he was involved in that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rod Serling. From what I understand, he actually came up with that whole twist ending, and they said because the book has like a twist ending too, but they wanted to punch it up a bit, and he came in and gave it kind of the Twilight Zone twist, as it were, at the end. He was a brilliant writer, brilliant storyteller. If you can get him to work on your movie,
right.
You have him come in. That was really cool. And of course, that ending, even if you know it's coming, it's always so cool at the end of the Planet of the Apes.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just shot perfectly as well with the kind of the crown of the Statue of Liberty there. It's just great. Well, the next movie, we're actually staying with Charlton Heston. So The Omega Man, 1971. This is the second screen adaptation of I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. And so you had this on your list. I have watched this a number of times because, I mean, Charlton Heston's so cool. Why did you put this on the list?
This is actually the first of the three that I had seen. And I have been watching it since I was a kid. I think they played it on HBO probably once every other year or something, it seemed like. And again, it was like the epitome of the whole, I like that you get to barricade yourself inside of your house and sort of guard off evil things at night. Out of the three, this is probably my favorite one for that. He really had it made, and he had a lot of taste. He had to go out and look for the nice Mustang and things like that. Yeah. For those who haven't seen it, Charlton Heston, like zooming around like abandoned Los Angeles in a classic Mustang, and then he's kind of barricaded in this home with like every kind of convenience. And then to top off at night, he kind of strolls out onto his balcony in a smoking jacket and takes pot shots at vampire creatures that try to attack him. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Bare-chested.
Yes. Yeah.
Bare-chested, smoking a cigar.
Yeah, smoking a cigar, just totally not even fazed by this. So since it is another adaptation of I Am Legend, there is a virus. This time the creatures are kind of like a smart vampire type creature, and kind of the big twist or whatever in it is Charlton Heston, his blood is the cure, basically. And I know it's kind of a spoiler, but I mean, if you haven't, seen a 50-year-old movie, I don't know, you just need to watch it. It is a fun movie. It is a little out there. It's kind of groovy, I guess you might say, but it is a ton of fun though.
You know what? Another thing that all three movies, I think, had in common in their own way was that they did really good job of building up the tension during the day. And during the day is supposed to be the safe time, right? You can run out and get your groceries or snag your Mustang from the local Ford dealership. And you just need to have yourself in safety when night falls, right? But I think all three movies did a pretty good job of keeping it tense during the daytime hours, if nothing else by watching that sun lower on the horizon.
Yes, and that kind of became a thing in this movie. It's just like you are almost like, get home, get home, lock the barricades, because the sun is going down. Yeah, I think.
Why are you talking to that mannequin? Move.
Yeah, he does talk to a lot of mannequins.
Yeah. By name, of course.
Yeah. I guess if you're alone that long, you probably would start talking to yourself pretty quick.
I do it now. So
yeah, I think I do. I do as well. So we're all not alone. Nobody wants to admit it, but we all do it. Well, the next one is another one you had put on the list. It is Where Have All the People Gone, 1974. I think this was a TV movie. I had never heard of this one. So why don't you tell us a little about this?
Yeah, this may be another one that you can catch on Prime, I think. The idea behind this one, and hopefully I don't flub it up too bad because it's been several months since I've seen it. This family is on a camping trip. I don't know, I think that they're doing archaeological studies in a cave or something like that. Kind of doesn't become real important after this point. But while they're researching in this cave, these solar flares start occurring on the Earth and turning people to dust. And I think if I remember right, it's also driving some people mad that are able to survive it, or maybe they only get some dose. At the beginning of the movie, they have a guide with him who was outside. So he gets caught in this solar storm and it doesn't like turn him to dust immediately. He's just sick and they're trying to get him off the side of this mountain because they were in the cave. When they come out, he doesn't feel well. And as they're trying to take him down the hill on this makeshift stretcher, he starts just dissolving into dust, basically. And then from that point on in the movie, they're trying to find the gentleman's wife who had left their research site and trying to travel and find her, and of course meeting a few other people along the way. It's that sort of typical apocalyptic feeling of there's almost nobody left, and when you run into somebody, is this a good thing or a bad thing? You know.
Mm-hmm. No, it sounds kind of cool. And I think it had Peter Graves in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds cool. Sadly, I have not seen that, so I'll try to see if I can catch it, if I can ever get time to watch movies.
Yeah, I feel you've added 10 or 15 movies to my list, and I don't know when they're all going to get watched.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so the next one is A Boy and His Dog from 1975. It was directed by L.Q. Jones. He was an old-time character actor who was seen in a number of Westerns, and it was based on a novel by science fiction grandmaster Harlan Ellison. Have you seen this one, Ty?
I have seen this. This has Don Johnson in it, pre-Miami Vice.
Yes, a very young Don Johnson, absolutely. And so this film has kind of a very complicated history. It has proved to be incredibly influential among filmmakers, and some of the movies that we are going to talk about here shortly wouldn't have existed if the director and the writers hadn't seen A Boy and His Dog. And, at the time, 1975, A Boy and His Dog, it was a box office disaster. It hardly made any money at the box office. Well, of course, the premise, is a telepathic dog and his boy, and the dog basically finds women for the boy so he can rape and murder them. And you're just like, that's not a date movie. Okay.
No.
Right. That's just not a date movie. So, and 1975 Jaws is like blowing up the box office all year long. So I know I've read some kind of conflicting stories that Harlan Ellison says, they gave it to this character actor to direct it. And then I've read also that he really liked L.Q. Jones. You can really hardly trust anything that Harlan Ellison said. So that's kind of sad. But this movie is brutal, and it is has proved to be very influential. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it as well, Ty.
Yeah, I think for me, the two winners in this movie are the surly telepathic dog. He's sort of seems to love his owner or the guy or whatever, but but he also does the job he's asked to do begrudgingly throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing would be that it has that great element of, I think he kind of thinks, well, he gets to a place where he's seemingly going to be safe and maybe things are better, and that's just not the case. It's just got a veneer on it.
Yeah, this movie takes place after like a nuclear war. They did some really crazy things for the production. They actually built, in the days before CGI, they actually built like gymnasium size buildings and flooded them with water and then drained the water out so that the desert would get that kind of cracked, look from the water evaporating. They did some really wild stuff. And overall, I mean, I know, like I said, I read some conflicting reports from Harlan Ellison because, like I said, he was known for kind of straight up lying a lot of times. So it was hard to tell which one, but he he said it was made poorly and all this stuff. I mean, this movie, there are a lot of directors today who would be put to shame at how well this movie is directed and how well this movie is put together. It is, like I said, it's maybe not everybody's cup of tea because it's brutal, but it is a very well-made movie. And then there is an ending, which I won't give away, but it is one of those endings where you're like, well, they wouldn't go there. Oh my goodness, they went there. And so it is a brutal movie, but it is very well made, and it has, like I said, proved to be very influential, especially among the kind of the filmmaking community.
Yeah, if you can get through those rough around the edges bits, I think this is definitely, if you like these kind of movies, this is a good one to add to your I've watched that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the best parts are when they're in the desert kind of area. When they go underground, things kind of slow down a bit and kind of loses a little bit of steam in kind of those underground areas. But it is still, like I said, a very well-made movie, and is definitely one that should be put on somebody's list if they like post-apocalyptic movies and have not seen it.
Yeah, I agree.
So the next movie is another one that comes from my list. It is Damnation Alley from 1977, and it's based on the Roger Zelazny novel of the same name. And Roger Zelazny, of course, is another grandmaster of science fiction. Have you seen Damnation Alley?
No, I haven't seen this one.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I will talk a little bit about that. So Damnation Alley, 1977, 20th Century Fox had 2 science fiction movies on their slate that they were putting out. One, they expected to be a huge blockbuster, and the other they thought was going to be a financial failure. So they rushed the one that they thought was going to be the failure out to theaters really quickly, as they kept back the other one to work on it a bit more and to kind of punch it up a bit. Well, the one they thought was going to be a flop was Star Wars. Yeah. And the other movie was Damnation Alley. As I might not even have to mention, right? Of course, Star Wars drops and becomes not only a blockbuster movie, but like a cultural phenomenon. And the studio panics, and they started really trying to just make Damnation Alley into a workable movie. And they had a number of problems with that. It stars Jan Michael Vincent and Paul Winfield. This is kind of the classic example of studio interference, that the director had shot a number of scenes that gave some backstories for the characters, and that all got cut out. Some people had some ideas later in filming that were very expensive and caused some things to break. So this movie, it's kind of a mess, but it is still a fun watch. And basically what it does is it follows 2 men who were working the missile controls of a nuclear missile site as the war happens, and they end up surviving because they were at a remote location, and they have some other people with them. And kind of the big piece of Damnation Alley is the huge vehicle that they drive all around the wasteland. It was called the Landmaster. So this movie, when they released it in theaters, it flopped and disappeared rather quickly. Somebody had the idea at one point to change the sky into different colors, like the nuclear bombs would have changed the sky, and that proved to be very expensive and didn't work exactly well. But I think it was in 1983, for the television premiere of this movie, this became kind of a sensation, and it was really built up with a lot of media and PR behind it. And it was one of the kind of the highest rated movies on television in 1983. And actually, that's when I remember first hearing about it and hearing about the Landmaster, even though I don't think I watched it at that time. I was very young. And so I just watched it actually earlier. Well, I was going to say this year, actually, it was 2019. I watched it in 2019. And it's fun, but it's kind of a mess.
Well, like I was saying before, these B, C, and D flicks I love them. They're like hard rock candy. You know they're going to mess up your teeth, but you're still going to eat them. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you like these kind of movies, it's definitely fun. Just if you're going to watch it with somebody, that might not be the best plan, but because it has some problems, but it's kind of a fun movie.
Well, the poster I'm looking at looks amazing. It's got the crazy red sky like you're talking about, and it has the Landmaster on there. I would go to the theater and watch this.
The poster is fantastic. The poster is great. And that's actually what you do with like a B movie, right? You make the poster awesome.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just get people into the theater. Yep. Absolutely. All right, well, then the next movie was one that you had on the list. It is Dawn of the Dead, 1978, of course, by George Romero, who wrote and directed it, kind of the zombie maestro or the zombie auteur.
Yeah, I mean, we could do an entire show just on him, right?
Oh,
so I just tried to pluck one.
Yeah.
One from all of it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of those movies where it's like, I think I've seen it. I wasn't for sure, but I know it's the one with the shopping mall, right?
Yep, that's what I was going to say, is either you've seen it, you've seen another flick that used the same idea, or your friends talked about how it was the perfect place to go in an apocalypse was the mall, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any kind of tidbits or anything about it?
Not a lot. I could probably glow on it and glow. I think that was the fun for me as a kid, at least, was the shopping mall. You know, you imagine this sort of, it's terrible outside, but hey, I get to play any games I want, or, use any device that's in the store, or whatever. You just kind of it's a playground, right?
Yep.
And certainly at that time, and a little bit later than that too, in the 80s, the mall was like the place, right? So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was the perfect place to stage your fortress for the apocalypse.
No, absolutely. And of course, it is highly regarded classic of zombies and horror as well. All right. Well, the next one, we need to hurry up. I think we've been on here for a long time. We have a lot of movies. That's what you get when you get two movie geeks together. But the next one that I threw on here was on my list. It's called The Ravengers from 1979. I don't know. Have you seen this one?
I have not.
Yeah.
But so what I've done on each one of these is I've gone to the wiki pages and I've looked at them. And
nice.
And so... yeah, they're all going on my list. This one's kind of nuts because it says something in the plot about, all of this has happened and he's going to seek vengeance as a vigilante. And I'm like, wow, how are you a vigilante in the apocalypse?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah.
Aren't you just like everybody else?
Yeah, this movie's a little nuts. It's kind of fun. It's kind of strange because it has some kind of old school Hollywood players in it. It has Art Carney, for goodness sake. It has Ernest Borgnine in it and some others. And it is Richard Harris, of course, is the star, and he, I guess, maybe for the younglings, he was the first Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movies. So he's like the main character, but it's this movie is something else. So there's been the apocalypse, and we follow Richard Harris as he is trying to escape these gangs. And, actually, the gangs are led by Anthony James, who is a really cool old character actor. He actually just passed away about a week ago. I saw the article on that, which is kind of sad. He was not only in this one, but he's in another one on my list, and he was also in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And actually, this movie has a couple of Star Trek connections. The director was Richard Compton, and Richard Compton actually appeared as an actor in Star Trek, the original series, and then he directed one of the Star Trek, The Next Generation episodes. So this movie is one of those where it has a very good cast, but it's definitely in kind of the camp B section, certainly.
Uh-huh. Wow, yeah, I didn't know that Anthony James had passed away. He's got that kind of cool, bird-like evil presence on film.
Yeah, kind of, I guess, like acne-scarred, kind of very slim face. Yeah, he passed away just a few days ago, I think, or a week or so ago. But yeah, he stopped acting in the kind of mid 90s to do some other things, but he was great. He was great. Well, also 1979 is kind of I don't know what you would call it, watershed or seminal moment in post-apocalyptic films, because Mad Max came out in 1979, and Mad Max was directed by George Miller, and of course catapulted George Miller to he just allows George Miller to direct anything he wants, and it catapulted Mel Gibson to international world stardom. I am sure you have seen Mad Max.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's sort of right up there with the, of the Dead movies from Romero, and it's just you have to see all of them. Yeah. They're a wonderful franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. And since probably it's one of the most famous movies on the list, we won't talk about it too much. But one of the interesting facts is George Miller, the director, he said that A Boy and His Dog, along with Death Race 2000 by Roger Corman, really inspired him to make Mad Max.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. And so, if somebody out there is listening and they have never seen the original Mad Max, honestly, they should just stop whatever they're doing and watch it because it is amazing.
Yeah. Right. One thing I would mention about that particular movie is that it's neat because it seems like you're sort of on the edge of this slow apocalypse. That's the impression I always get from it. From the next movie on, it's much more high paced, much more obvious. The world is dying. However, in the first movie, it's just like you're seeing this slow burn until the end of the movie.
That's absolutely correct. That, when we get to the sequel, which we're going to mention as well, that it's been pretty clear that it's been a nuclear war that's happened. But in Mad Max, it's almost just like society is just decaying. And it's just spinning down, and we're just getting worse and worse and more lawless and things like that. And so that is kind of an interesting take on the post-apocalyptic genre. I think in some of the more modern movies, it always has to be a war, a virus, or something like that, whereas kind of it's almost bleaker just to think that actually our society is just going to spin down on its own and we don't have to destroy ourselves. It's just going to turn out to be lawless, more lawless as we go along.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to watch him playing the part of one of the people that's trying to hold on to order for as long as he can.
Yeah, and that kind of, just adds to the human element there that Max is this police officer, of course, the symbol of order, and the world is just spinning out of control, and he has a beautiful young family, but the world is it doesn't allow for that anymore, and it just spins out of control. And of course, when his family is killed, he joins that world as like an avenging angel or something.
Jumps in with both feet. Yes.
And anybody who's hurt him needs to watch out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know you wanted to move on really quickly in that one because of how famous it was, but that's one thing I think really sets that one apart.
Yeah.
That it's not a slow movie, but it is on the edge of the end.
Yes. No, I completely agree. And I think it is, worth mentioning. I think it is too. I know I said I wanted to move on, but some of the movies in the 70s, they had so much, they had so much story, right? Like we get to know Max and we know his wife and we know his friends and stuff like this. Movies nowadays just move so quickly that they're just, I guess pared down so much that it is kind of I think it's refreshing to go back if somebody out there has watched, is watching only, kind of more modern movies, to go back and watch a movie from the 70s and just see how much story and how much character development they pack into a movie that is really just crammed with action, from start to finish, just kind of an interesting, just to see that it is actually possible to have character development and a ton of action in the same movie.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a very fast-paced movie for that time period. I kind of make jokes about some of the movies from the 70s because it just seems like they really would hold on to a scene. There's just a guy with his back to you walking down the road whistling, and you've got to watch that for 3 minutes, wondering what is happening here right now. Just move on already.
Yeah, it is something like if you go through some of these movies just to see how cinema has changed. In the course of 50-ish years, 60 years, it is something else.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, the next one We get another St. Louis shout out is Escape from New York, 1981 by John Carpenter, of course, starring Kurt Russell, which was shot in St. Louis. And I am sure you have seen this one as well.
Oh, I've seen that several times. Love that movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on. Well, I might have added to the list. I'll be quiet. But the winner in that one for me is we'll just talk about The Submarine right away. The Submarine was wonderful. I was just at the right age. You know, you want the big toys and stuff. Well, that thing was like a water motorcycle. I really wanted one.
Yeah, it is definitely a fun movie, and it's a definite must see for anybody who loves post-apocalyptic movies. It is famous for turning the island of Manhattan into a maximum security prison because you just can't. The world is so lawless after some of the disasters and things that have happened. It's just so lawless that you just have to just wall it off and keep all the scum or whatever in there.
Right. Yeah, it was crazy. It was terrifying too. Again, I was a pretty young kid at that time. So to see them do something like that, and it was so dark and so violent. Now I'm like, yay. At the time I was like, yay, but that's a little scary.
Yeah, I was very young when I saw Mad Max and this movie, and it was like, is this what the world is going to be like? Right? Like there was a very dark visions of what the future was going to hold. I guess like Star Trek was about the only thing that was like, it was showing a bright future in those days, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Movies like Blade Runner and things like that, they're huge movies, but man, were they dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, the next one on our list is The Road Warrior, which, of course, is the sequel to Mad Max. So any of our friends abroad or in Australia will call it Mad Max 2. It was released as Road Warrior here in the United States, and it's from 1981. So George Miller now gets a lot of money, and he gets to do what he wants, but he takes Mad Max and he kind of just pares it down into a Western where I think Mel Gibson says, I think it's 28 or 38 words in the whole movie, but you just don't even care because it is shot so well. And I think The Road Warrior is possibly, if not the greatest, it is one of the greatest, certainly, action movies of all time.
Yeah, you get to see him come back, and even though he's obviously hardened and more crusty than the last time you saw him because of what happened to his family, he still has that heart and still wants to help people. I guess he's still a cop at heart and wants to do the right thing in the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah, even though the world is crazy, but yeah, he finds some good people that he can protect once again. And at first, of course, he's the reluctant hero, but we all know he is going to stick around and help these people find safety. And it is just an amazing movie that it just works on so many levels. It is almost ridiculous how good it is.
Yeah, the bad guys are even more overt in this one. I think they saw, well, everybody went kind of nuts over the crazy bad guys, so they went even bigger, right? The guy with the helmet and the chain. And
the Lord Humongous. Yeah. They definitely went big on the villains, and it was just a super, super cool movie, which again, I can't imagine somebody hasn't seen it, but if they haven't out there, you need to see The Road Warrior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is another one where I think you should just see all of them because they're really good.
Oh, yeah. You got to see all the Mad Max movies. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, we're going to get into a few of these movies here, but The Road Warrior really just inspired a wave of knockoff films. And there is no way, even like one podcast, you could not mention all of the Road Warrior knockoff films. I mean, it's just impossible. Just if anybody's out there and they want to get into some of them, if you just Google like Italian post-apocalyptic films or Philippine post-apocalyptic films, you will find so many that it will keep you busy for, it could keep you busy for years watching them because Italy and the Philippines, who were kind of known for putting out low-budget movies that were kind of played on big blockbusters, they just started cranking post-apocalyptic movies like crazy, and there are so many of them. It's impossible to list all of them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of movies too that are post-apocalyptic that they're not even trying to say, oh, I'm just like Mad Max in that franchise, but that the Mad Max franchise kind of drew for a lot of us what the picture of the apocalypse looked like.
Yeah.
The actual, the desert landscape and all that for a long time. I think that sort of dominated the scene until zombies really dominated the scene recently, at least.
Yeah. And then water. Right.
And
we'll get to that. I don't know if we have time, but we'll see. So yeah, you either have a desert or then when you get closer to modern day, it went a different direction. But yeah, absolutely. So the next movie on the list, Warlords of the 21st Century from 1982. It is also called Battle Truck. This was kind of New Zealand's answer to, we can make a post-apocalyptic movie. I mean, just like Australia. I mean, we can do that. So they made Warlords of the 21st Century. Have you seen this one?
This is not one I've seen, but I did watch the trailer for this one, and it's definitely on my list. It's like an apocalyptic version of Megaforce for anybody that's old enough to remember this old drive-in theater movie. It reminded me a lot of that just in the trailer with the motorcycles and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'd never thought of that, but it is kind of like Omega Force. Omega Force is awesome, by the way. And Warlords of the 21st Century. It's also called Battle Truck. I think Battle Truck is actually a better name, but this is a really fun movie. It's not the Road Warrior. It's not Mad Max. But as far as Mad Max imitating kind of movies go, this is really good. Like the acting is pretty good, and the action is just really cool. The next one, these next two, I think in the early 80s, a really good pitch for a film that would get a producer excited would be Star Wars plus Mad Max. And so I threw these kind of in. The first one is Space Hunter: Adventures in the Forbidden Zone from 1983. This starred Peter Strauss and Molly Ringwald. Have you seen this one?
I don't think I've seen this one. It seems really familiar, but certainly in the description, they had me at a sail-driven vehicle resembling a pirate ship on rails.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, I want one right now in the backyard.
That vehicle is the coolest thing. This movie was produced by Ivan Reitman. So his next big movie that he would actually direct would be in 1984 would be Ghostbusters. But this is what he put out in 1983. This movie is very strange because the premise, you can kind of say, well, it's kind of dumb. The dialogue, kind of dumb. The special effects, kind of dumb. This movie is awesome. This movie is just awesome. And I don't even mean so bad it's good. It's just really awesome. And so the concept, just a little bit, is there's a space bounty hunter. He gets a contract that will get him out of debt, of course, if he can bring in this contract. And it's on a planet where a virus has been released. And so the planet just looks like it's straight out of Road Warrior. And they have this super cool train vehicle that has a sail on it. Just really super cool. And of course, the great Michael Ironside is the villain in it, and he's just super cool as well. Yeah. But it's not for everybody. This movie's not for everybody, and some people will think it's totally dumb. Oh, Ernie Hudson is in it as well, and Ernie Hudson, he is on a different level in this. He is just so charismatic. He just picks up and steals some of the scenes that he is in. It is really a ton of fun. So it is definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, that's definitely going on my list. Ernie Hudson's great. Michael Ironside, I mean, his voice alone, you just tense up. Am I in trouble?
No kidding. All right, well, the next one is Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin, 1983. This was another Star Wars plus Mad Max one from prolific, low-budget filmmaker Charles Band. Have you seen this one?
I haven't seen this one, but again, they had me at a sky bike. What?
Yeah, this one, I've only seen it one time. It's kind of hard to see. I've only seen it one time, and I was probably 11 or 12. It is kind of famous in that it contains neither a metal storm nor the destruction of Jared Sin. But if you want some low budget Star Warsy, Mad Maxy stuff, it is something to behold. And it has the Richard Mull, the guy who played Bull in Night Court, the really tall guy. He is kind of a bad guy in this, and he is pretty cool. It also has the actor Michael Preston, who played Papagallo in The Road Warrior. He is Jared Sin. He is actually the big evil dude who is in the movie. I mean, it's just hard to describe. It's just crazy. Actually, It and Space Hunter are both in 3D because there was an early 80s 3D craze as well. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of weird things being thrown right at you and right at the camera. So the next one I put on here is a little bit back to kind of realistic, and it is The Day After. This was a TV movie that made like a huge sensation on network television in the early 80s. It was directed by Nicholas Meyer, who the year prior had directed Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which is amazing. And I don't know, have you seen this one?
Yeah, I've seen this one. It's pivotal enough that people still talk about this movie.
Yeah.
And how it affected people. I feel a little silly because whenever I saw it on the list, I thought, oh yeah, Day After, I remember that. And funnily enough, I was actually thinking of another movie which is similar and came out the same year called Testament. It's similar in that I think it affected a lot of people. And of course, the time period was right because everybody was terrified of nuclear war at the time. But another interesting thing about this, and I know you're about to talk about it, is it takes place in Lawrence, Kansas, which isn't too far from us.
Yeah.
Lawrence, Kansas and Kansas City. So
yeah.
That's kind of a neat one too, that it's close to home.
Yeah, filmed in the Midwest. You know, I had mentioned how like influential A Boy and His Dog was, and how Mad Max and how The Road Warrior were on filmmakers. The Day After kind of holds a special place actually in world history. A journalist was interviewing President Ronald Reagan, and this journalist said, you know, from 1983 to 1984, your approach to the Soviet Union seemed to almost just take like a 180. What changed? And President Reagan said, I watched The Day After, and I just knew we could never allow that to happen.
It was a movie, and he was an actor, so he probably took it even more seriously than most of us.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I just find that to be kind of incredible that the president of the United States watches, you know, a TV movie and is just so profoundly moved by it that he said it was just seeing, he kind of mentioned, other movies are kind of like over the top about nuclear war and stuff, but The Day After just follows kind of like average, normal Americans kind of around. And he said that affected him greatly, and that he totally changed his foreign policy based on it. So, I mean, that is just the power that a movie can have. I mean, I just find it incredible.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest impact that it had on most people, especially at that time.
Yeah.
We were still in that sort of scary Cold War, that it wasn't downtown LA or something like that. It wasn't a big city. It was the Midwest.
Yeah.
Sort of breadbasket folks.
Yeah, absolutely. It is quite different than modern movies in that it takes kind of forever for anything to kind of develop. It is just kind of just plays out very slowly. And again, kind of just to the pacing of how cinema has changed. And also, I think there was something to that, just showing kind of the horrors of what we might do to ourselves, and how just watching these people try to deal with that. And,
it was definitely the drama to Mad Max's action, that's for sure.
Yes. All right. The next one is one that I had put on the list as well. It is Le Dernier Combat, pardon my French, from 1983. And it is from writer and director Luc Besson, who has gone on to like dominate all of European movies in the 2000s, from the late 90s to the 2000s, having, what did Luc Besson do? The Fifth Element. He did Taken. He produces the Taken movies. He produces Transporter movies. His most recent one is Valerian, and so he is kind of all over kind of cinema and that now. And this was his first film. And I don't know, have you seen this one?
I haven't. I watched I think it was a snippet from a fight scene or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible I was on the wrong, somebody remaking it or something, but pretty sure it was the right movie. And it was really crisp and clear. It was black and white.
Yeah.
The scene that I saw. Yeah, That was probably it then. And it is quality was really good for 1983.
Yeah. It is in black and white. There are only like 2 words of dialogue spoken in the whole movie because something with the apocalypse makes it so people can't speak. And so the film is essentially silent kind of all the way through. It just kind of adds to the, talk about loneliness, as we have mentioned. If you can't speak to people, we can just kind of imagine what that would be like. And so that kind of adds to this film. This film is amazing. And I, as a kind of a failed filmmaker myself, I don't understand how this could be somebody's first film. It's just so good. It's just incredible. But that's why he gets to make whatever movie he wants to make nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is definitely worth checking out. So the next movie on our list was provided by you. It is Night of the Comet from 1984, starring the great Catherine Mary Stewart. This movie is something else. Of course, I have seen this. Why don't you tell us a little about this movie?
The movie circles around a couple of sisters. They're the main characters. And that's actually one of the things that makes this movie historic, is because at that time you did not have women as lead characters. This was one of the first times. In fact, even the movie poster, they have a secondary character as a man, and he's standing out in the middle in the front. And the truth is that he wasn't even the lead character. The 2 sisters were. But so the premise of this movie is there's a comet that's going over, and everybody is out to watch the comet. And the thing is this, it drops dust or something like that, and either turns them to dust, or they become these zombie-like creatures. The girls aren't affected because I believe it was because they were inside of metal rooms. The older sister was inside of a theater projection room, which had metal walls or something like that. And the younger sister had been, I think, in a metal shed, something like that, after getting in an argument with her stepmom. But so, it's that sort of typical, you wake up and there's nobody around except for the occasional crazy bloodthirsty zombie.
Yeah, this movie is highly influential as well. It has a very strong cult following. It's also an early film role for Robert Beltran, who would later be Chakotay in Star Trek Voyager. You did mention the sisters, so I mentioned Catherine Mary Stewart, and then the actress who played her sister is Kelly Maroney. And just a little bit of trivia, the Kelly Maroney character, the younger sister, is basically stuck in her cheerleading outfit for a long time. And that character, I believe, based on some Hollywood legends and some things that I've heard, is the inspiration for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that Joss Whedon really loves this movie.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a fun movie. It is bizarre as heck, but it is a lot of fun. Yeah,
this is one of my at least once a year movies.
I haven't seen it in a while, but it is a ton of fun. All right, so the next movie is one of the more famous movies that I put on the list, and this is The Terminator from 1984. Of course, this is James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this movie is still getting sequels and remade and everything today. It's kind of interesting because it's post-apocalyptic, but most of the action happens before the apocalypse because there's the time travel element, and I am sure you have seen this one as well.
Oh yeah, this franchise has got to be one of the most quoted franchise series. I mean, for absolutely no reason, people will say, "I'll be back." Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
come with me if you want to live.
Yes. Yeah. Again, this was one of those movies when I was probably way too young to be watching it, but I saw it when I was like 12 or something, and it was so powerful. And I don't know, James Cameron, just the way he was able to deliver all of this top-heavy exposition during action scenes and stuff like this, he just took something that could have been totally boring and just made it, an absolute classic. And that's why, of course, James Cameron just gets a blank check on whatever he's making, is one of the reasons. Yeah, the action is great in these movies. The sort of struggle that Sarah Connor has to go through with, suspending her disbelief. Mm-hmm. After this guy's chasing after her, trying to kill her, that there's something important about her and the future, and it's just a great story. Yeah, and kind of this kind of what, like a semi-competent waitress becomes a warrior and the mother and the savior of the future, right? Through the course of an hour and 45-minute movie. And it's just like 2 thumbs up, right? It was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job of making Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, it's seemingly impossible to beat. He just keeps coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was one of those movies where that makes sense. I think a lot of copycats later on tried to have that same feeling, and you're just like, it doesn't work. But the Terminator, it totally works, that he just not going to stop. And he just, blow off his legs. He's still going to crawl after you, do whatever, he's just still coming after you. And it made perfect sense. And sadly, some, movies try to do that to get like a scare, an extra scare out of people or something. And it just doesn't work right. This one worked perfectly.
Yeah, they want us to suspend our disbelief, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. And so I'm sure probably everybody who's watching this, if they haven't seen this, they need to. So the next one is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. So this was the 3rd installment in the Mad Max series. This is from 1985. So Mel Gibson and George Miller kind of go, Mad Max, I guess you can also call it Mad Max Goes Hollywood, because this is when Mad Max kind of goes Hollywood, and we have Tina Turner, who plays kind of the main antagonist of the film, and her song "We Don't Need Another Hero" was #1 on the Billboard charts. And so Mad Max, from kind of its humble beginnings as an independent Australian film, have gone full Hollywood in this movie.
Yeah, I think I was 11 going on 12 when Beyond Thunderdome came out, and it was just about perfect for me because they introduced these kids as part of the story. So I was already into Mad Max, and then this just pulled me way in.
Yeah. I agree. I was, I can't remember how old I was, but I was about the same age. I was about 12-ish or so. It was just so weird because, coming from very R-rated movies, now we get Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, which is PG-13. I remember being on the playground at school, and we're like singing the song and stuff. Like, I mean, Mad Max was just in the culture. And I think people tend to forget that sometimes, that the song was #1 and the movie was a huge box office hit. I just think people kind of tend to forget that and might want to think it's kind of an obscure movie. I'll mention it sometimes, and people who are younger have never heard of it, but it's like, this was not obscure in the least.
No, certainly not at that time. It was huge, and that song just played constantly on the radio.
Yes. Yeah, all the time. I know it gets some hardcore fans in the Mad Max kind of series can be a little hard on it sometimes because it doesn't kind of have maybe like the raw power of the first one, and it doesn't have some of the kind of just the basic, just, kind of like no frills, just hard on action from the Road Warrior. George Miller was really trying to say some things about kind of being lost, not being able to go home, and kind of trying to deal with some really big themes here in this movie. And I definitely want to give him some credit for that. I think that is really good. But, some people do say that it's kind of one of their least favorite of the series, although I really enjoy it. But if you're talking about this series, the least favorite of this series still blows away about 90% of other movies, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate how it was just showing another progression of the world. You look at these kids, and they didn't even speak the same because they had been so self-reliant for most of their lives by this point. It just kind of shows where the world's changing, where the world's going, and how the younger folks wouldn't even be aware of what it was like before, not fully aware.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that was a different take. And I know some, the criticism would be, when the kids are introduced, that the movie slows down from its action pace. And that's certainly true. It does slow down from kind of, being an action movie. But I was just always fascinated with the kids, kind of in the same way that you're talking about there. Is just that, especially being so young for me, it was just like, oh, wow, that would, how would you know how to grow up, and how would you know how to do these things if all the adults have been killed in the nuclear war and you're just kind of alone there? You would develop your own language, your own culture, and your own stories of the past, which those kids do. And I thought that was all great.
Yeah, and even the false understanding of what things were like, the sort of explanations that they gave for the airplanes and the buildings and things like that. I was just intrigued by the whole thing when it came to the kids. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. And like I was saying, there's so much there, like that it's easy to miss. But if you do some research online, if people are interested, you can find some things. And there are people who have made some notes, and George Miller has said some different things, that there are all little things that like connect into that bigger theme of that we're lost, we can't go home. Mad Max, he can't go home, or he's choosing not to go home, but we need to go back home, kind of, and that's all kind of reflected in the ending of the movie when they find Sydney again. They come out of the wasteland and find the city of Sydney. It's just the depth that's in that movie is just, I mean, it's just astounding. If some movies had half of that depth, I think we would be in better shape with some movies that we get.
Yeah, I'm definitely not in the school of giving that any poo-poo marks. I love this movie too.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. Yeah. It's different. I mean, all three of those first films are quite different from each other, and you have to view it kind of in that kind of regard, right? It's not the first movie, which was like this study of a man losing his family and bent on revenge in a world that's kind of running down. It's not the second movie where the hero, saves people out of this, wasteland. It's not that. It's something else. And if you look at it kind of in that way, I think you'll just find that it's better than a lot of movies that people say are good these days.
Yeah, I love it. Definitely a watchable franchise.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Multiple. You can watch it over and over again and not get bored with it.
And I'm sure that the two of us do.
Oh my gosh, I have seen those movies way more than I care to imagine.
Yeah, they're usually on my at least once every other year, if not every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just so good. They're just so good. All right, well, the next one that I put on my list is a movie called Radioactive Dreams. It's also from 1985. It is by director Albert Puig. And I don't know, have you seen this one?
I have not.
Okay. All right, Radioactive Dreams. I put this on here so we kind of go from the pinnacle of George Miller and Mad Max to Radioactive Dreams, but it is so bizarre that it just bears mentioning, because Radioactive Dreams follows these two teenagers who grow up in a fallout shelter after a nuclear war, and they grow up in there reading the hard-boiled detective fiction from the 30s and 40s, and they think that's what the world is like. And then they emerge from the shelter to find this kind of punk post-apocalyptic world. It is just kind of an out there movie. Albert Puig is kind of famous for directing incredibly low budget, odd, weird, strange movies. His most famous is probably Jean-Claude Van Damme's Cyborg. He directed that. But Radioactive Dreams is just like, it's one of those movies where you're just like, what were these people on when they made a movie? And it ends with like a big dance number. It is just totally crazy. It's one of those again where, we were raving about Mad Max and some of those movies are fantastic. This is the one for the person who just likes post-apocalyptic movies, is ready to see something that is totally strange.
So I haven't seen this one, but it reminds me of there was a Brendan Fraser movie in the late 80s or early 90s where his father locks them in the nuclear fallout shelter. And then when he's supposed to go, it's time, he needs to go find a girlfriend. They let him out. When he comes out, he's like, nothing has happened. They were mistaken, and they've just been down in the basement for 20 years or something like that.
Oh, yeah? Oh, gosh. I'm not putting that one together. It sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not thinking of the name offhand.
Yeah, I can't think of it either, but it was really funny.
Okay, well, I'll have to look into that, because he was in a string of some of those which were really funny. But yeah, I'll have to check into that a little bit. All right, so the next one on the list is one that I put on there. Again, it is Steel Dawn from 1987, starring Patrick Swayze, directed by Lance Houle. and it was written by Doug Leffler. And I have a bit of cool trivia for this one, or I don't know if it's trivia, but I was able to interview Doug Leffler here on my podcast, so I will link to that episode where I talked to Doug Leffler about this movie. Ty, do you remember Steel Dawn?
I remember a great deal. It seems like I just watched it again 2 or 3 years ago too. One of my favorite parts of Steel Dawn is it's one of, if not the coolest apocalyptic sword. Oh, the sword that Patrick Swayze has is just awesome.
Yes. And I think there are a few movies that I know of who tried to use swords in kind of the wasteland thing, but the sword in Steel Dawn is like super cool. It is the coolest sword, and Patrick Swayze, of course, is just cool, as it was. But I always find it interesting because at the time, 1987, like in the kind of the late summer 1987, Patrick Swayze goes from, mid-grade movie star to world, famous movie star because of Dirty Dancing. And then just like a few months later, Steel Dawn like appeared in the theater and disappeared like within a week. And but I enjoy this movie. It has some problems here, but they were trying to do some really cool things, and I really appreciated Doug Leffler coming on the podcast and allowing me to ask some kind of crazy questions about a movie that is getting on in age now. But he had some great stories about the title, that it really originally wasn't called Steel Dawn. It was called Nomad, but there was, if you remember kind of the late and mid 80s, there was another movie that was kind of a staple in video stores that was called Nomads. And so the studio wanted him to change it, and he submitted all these different ideas, and then Steel Dawn was not one of those. And he thinks that they named it Steel Dawn to try to pass it off as a sequel to Red Dawn, which was another Patrick Swayze movie, which is awesome, by the way. But
yeah, I actually almost put that one on my list, and I was ready to argue the point, because even though it's not, obviously it's not an Armageddon film, but for Americans, it certainly would be.
Yeah. And I think I only left it off because when I did some of these movies as a presentation at Archon, I tried to limit it to like post-nuclear stuff. But that was certainly like a post-invasion, post-apocalyptic, because society just like crashes and burns in that movie. And that movie is just phenomenal. It is well made from beginning to end, has a fantastic cast. It is an outstanding movie. So if somebody hasn't checked out Red Dawn, they need to do so.
Yeah, that's a great one.
All right. Well, we are getting on in time. Maybe we can talk about just a couple more here really quickly, and then I'm just going to have to bring it back on to talk about a ton more movies.
That sounds good.
All right. So the next one is one I put on. There's a lot from 87 because I think Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome kind of caused another wave of post-apocalyptic movies to come out. The next one, just like Road Warrior did, because Road Warrior came out in 81. Then in 83, we had a ton of movies. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome comes out in 85. And then in 87, we get a ton of post-apocalyptic movies as well, because it takes so long to make a feature film and to get it into distribution and things like that. So the next movie that I had down was Cherry 2000 from 1987. This is kind of a larger studio who is trying to get into the post-apocalyptic genre. This was from Orion Pictures, and it had some really famous actors in it. It had Melanie Griffith in it, and it had the old character actor Ben Johnson in it, who was awesome. I think this was his final film. He was in tons of Westerns from back in the day. Just an amazing actor. And he shows up and just steals the scene away from all the young whippersnappers who are trying to act around him. But have you seen this one? I
have. It's probably been 15 or 20 years since I've seen it, but but I do remember it. It was one I probably shouldn't have been watching.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the title, I think, throws people off, but it's not that kind of movie. It's it's not for kids, but it's definitely not that kind of movie. But it features another classic Mustang as well, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that was an homage to Omega Man or not, but it does kind of feature a cool Mustang.
Yeah, so, if I remember right, that was Cherry 2000 was the model that Melanie Griffith was playing, right?
No, So the premise is a little ridiculous. But this is actually a really good movie. So the premise is our hero. He has like an android wife, and she is Cherry 2000, and she breaks. And so he needs to get some parts for her. See, I said it was a little ridiculous. But he goes on this quest because the parts for that model are way away in like the forbidden zone or something. And so he has to hire a bounty hunter. And that bounty hunter turns out to be Melanie Griffith. And of course, through the course of the movie, he realizes what? He needs to love a real woman, right? He needs to be around real people and not in some kind of fantasy world. And aside from the premise being a bit out there and a bit ridiculous, this movie is actually very good. It's very well made. Tim Thomerson, kind of the old character actor from tons of B movies in the 80s. He's the villain in it, and has some good action. Like I said, Ben Johnson shows up and just steals his scenes and is just great. So that's kind of the premise there.
Yeah, it all started to fall into place again once you said that his wife was the Cherry 2000. Yeah, mm-hmm. I remember the premise then.
Yeah. And not everybody's cup of tea, but it is actually a very good movie put out by Orion Pictures. Maybe we can get one more in here real fast. The next one on my list is World Gone Wild from 1987. This one also has Catherine Mary Stewart in it, who was in Night of the Comet. Have you seen this movie?
I don't believe I have.
Okay. Yeah, this one is kind of out there. It has Adam Ant in it. He is the main villain. If somebody would hear a name from the 80s, it is a British singer Adam Ant. The basic premise is there's this colony of survivors from an apocalypse, and they are living kind of in this walled community where they have cars all around them, and that they have a well, and that water is very hard to find. And so our villain wants that water supply really desperately. So they send off somebody to kind of this crazy post-apocalyptic city to hire mercenaries to help defend the town. So it's basically a remake of almost like Seven Samurai kind of thing. But I guess the budget was a little smaller. We only get like 5 mercenaries to come and help the city. Some of the cool things about this movie, they don't take themselves too seriously. They knew where they were going to fall a little shy on some budget and things. And so they don't take themselves a little seriously. Bruce Dern is in it as well. He's kind of like a patriarch figure who is watching out over the town. And it has some other great character actors in it. Anthony James is in it as well. He plays kind of a crazy cannibal guy, but he's like a good guy. It's really strange. But there is he's one of the people that help defend the town. But and so they do they turn some of the tropes on their heads a little bit here and there. And it's like they were all having a lot of fun with it. So this is, again, not one of the greatest movies in the world, but it is a ton of fun to watch. A kicker at the end, over the credits sequence at the end, is played a song that is called World Gone Wild by an 80s kind of super group called Checkered Past. And that song is flat out awesome. So if you hang with the movie, just listen to the song at the credits at the end, and it is a ton of fun. Again, not Mad Max level, but I don't know, if you're entertained and you have fun, I mean, the movie can't be all bad.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I may have seen this. Adam Ant is a bad guy. Sounds really familiar.
Yeah, he has like a helicopter that doesn't work, and he has it like pulled around. And so, yeah, it's one of those where you may have seen it, but it is one of those movies where you're just like, how did this get made kind of thing? But it is a ton of fun. They play on some of the kind of the action tropes as well, like I said, and kind of testing the mercenaries to see if they're just out for money or if they really care about the people in the town. There is just some kind of funny stuff that they do. I think it's definitely worth the watch, worth the time to watch, although it may be a little hard to find. But, Ty, I am taking up a ton of your time. We have I don't even know, I think we had 30 maybe 25 more movies on our list,
Probably.
but I will not keep you any longer. It's just been a blast talking to you about these movies. We'll just have to do a part 2 and pick up and talk about some more post-apocalyptic movies. But before I let you go, why don't you tell people a little about Crypt Monkey Games and where they can find you online?
Yeah, you can find us at cryptmonkeygames.com. And pretty much from there, you can go out to social media. And we have our links on there for Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff too. Certainly, you can find our games on there. We're working on finishing a Kickstarter that is sadly behind right now. Sorry, backers, we're working on it. And hopefully that'll be out soon. We have other games that we're kind of holding off on finishing the design until we get this Kickstarter done because we need to get stuff out to the backers. But the next year or so, we have several more games, smaller games that should be coming out. Dawn, my wife, is working on those games. It's kind of a family affair. My wife and my daughter are working on games, and I have sort of the bigger projects on the role-playing side of it while they'll work on the board games. So that's going on right now. As we mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 stuff's going on, and part of Dawn's time, we have an Etsy shop as well where she makes and sells dice bags and things like that. Well, right now she's also selling fake masks for COVID-19, but fun, geeky stuff, with superheroes and horror characters and things like that on it. So it's still sort of in our strain and still helping out.
Yeah, super cool. And as always, I will provide links to your website and your social media in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. So anybody who's listening, head over there and check out Crypt Monkey Games. And I'll put a link to your Etsy shop as well in there so people can check that out. Well, Ty, it has been a blast to talk to you again. And I am looking forward to part 2 of post-apocalyptic movies. This was awesome. It is one of those things when it's a little rare to be able to talk about, say, Steel Dawn or something like that with somebody because some of these movies have kind of been eclipsed by some larger films and that. But I think all the ones we were talking about are super fun and deserve to be watched and still have some fans somewhere because I know I enjoy a lot of them. So just thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I'm looking forward to next time.
All right, there you have it, guys. Oh, my goodness. Ty and I covered a lot of post-apocalyptic movies in this episode. It was just so much fun being able to talk to somebody who is about my similar age and has some similar likes in films. So as I mentioned, this has turned into just a part 1. We're going to have a part 2 where Ty will come back on the show and we will talk about more post-apocalyptic movies. So please stay tuned for that. Also, as I mentioned in the episode, Ty is a game designer and I have provided links to his website, Crypt Monkey Games, so you can check out the games that he creates there. Also, he mentioned that him and his wife run an Etsy shop. They have some really cool geeky items for sale. I've also put a link in the show notes for that as well. So it would be super cool if you would check out his website and his Etsy shop and support his and his family's work. Now, guys, if you want some free stuff, head over to dicegeeks.com/free. You'll get 10 free dungeon maps. You'll never miss an episode of this show. And every Friday, you'll get an email update letting you know what is going on in the realm of Dice Geeks. Also, guys, if you want to help me out a little bit, if you head over to dicegeeks.com, you will see a lot of the books that I write. Most of them are geared to help game masters cut down their prep time. They can also be found on Amazon and drive-thru-rpg.com. Just search for Dice Geeks, all one word, or the Book of Random Tables. You will find a lot of my books if you do either one or both of those things. Now, guys, hey, if you like interviews like like the one you listened to today, please consider supporting the show in some way. You can leave a review, you can tell a friend, you can subscribe. You could also head over to patreon.com/dicegeeks and support the show financially. That would mean the world to me. All right, guys. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this episode today. And until we meet again in the wasteland, keep gaming.